Hi everyone. Welcome back to the Unite Pieces channel, and today we are going to be talking about an action, fantasy, movie, called In the Name of the King, a dungeon siege tale. Make sure you watch this video till the end, for a better experience. At the beginning of the movie we are shown with a couple who are making out. They are Mariella and Galleon. Galleon himself is the main evil character in this movie. Galleon is an evil wizard who wants to become king. Galleon also gathers Krug's army in a remote castle, where his army contains half-human or half-animal creatures, who have no intelligence and only have hunting properties. Mariella, meanwhile, is the daughter of a good witch, from a kingdom called EHB. On the other hand, at Criswin's castle, we can also see Merrick, who infiltrates there and witnesses what Galleon is building. Galleon and Mariella's relationship is a forbidden one, because in fact Galleon and his army are enemies to the kingdom of EHB. The scene then moves to the peaceful and beautiful countryside. We finally meet Jason Statham, or in this film called by the name of the farmer. The farmer is harvesting the crops with his son as usual. Soon after came his neighbor, named Norik. Norik came there to exchange a pig for a few sacks of corn belonging to the farmer. Norik was invited to dinner together, and we are shown the farmer's happy little family. Norik himself is the one who has been taking care of the farmer since childhood, because it turns out that the farmer was once a child, who came to the village. The farmer did not know where and who his mother's father was. Because he felt sorry for him, the villagers then took care of him. However, Norik was the closest person to him. Now as an adult, the farmer is married, has a beautiful wife named Solana, and a son named Zeph. The scene then moves to the kingdom of EHB. We are introduced to the king of the kingdom of EHB, and his nephew, Duke Fallow, who is eating disrespectfully. The king now has no heir. His wife and child have long since died in the war. Instead of remarrying, the king prefers to be widowed, because the king is a loyal person. The next morning, Solana and Zeph went to the market to sell the harvest, as well as go to the house of Solana's father and mother, while the farmer could not come because he had to take care of other things. After Solana arrived at her father and mother's house, Solana then took her son to the bell tower where her father was on guard. However, Solana accidentally saw an army of Krug from the direction of the hill that seemed to be attacking the village. Solana immediately told her father and son to leave, while Solana herself rang the bell to warn the residents. At the plantation, the farmer who was working was attacked by a group of Krug. However, it turned out that the farmer was also an expert in swordplay and fighting, so the farmer could defeat the Krug one by one. After that, the farmer went to Norik's farm, and immediately helped him who was being pressed by the Krug army. After that, they immediately went to pick up Solana and her son. But when they got there, they saw that the Krug had also attacked the village. The farmer was then told by his father-in-law that Solana was trapped in the bell tower. Without thinking, the farmer immediately headed there to pick her up. The farmer saw that the bell tower they were going to had burned down, and while going there, the farmer also had a fight with the Krug leader, who turned out to be remotely controlled by Galleon using his magic. Galleon felt attracted when he saw the farmer, because Galleon felt a different aura from him, and Galleon felt that the farmer was a threat to his power. Therefore Galleon continued to attack the farmer, and even entered the house of his in-laws to finish them off, including the farmer's son. After destroying the village and killing the farmer's family, the Krug army retreated. Meanwhile, the farmer buried the bodies of his son and father-in-law. At that time he was told by Norik that no one could find Solana's body, so most likely Solana was still alive and kidnapped by the Krug, because they also took other prisoners. After everything was destroyed, the troops from the kingdom of EHB arrived. Their arrival was very late, but they asked the surviving men to join the king's troops to attack the Krug troops. However, the farmer who had been disappointed with them flatly refused, and decided to go alone, to save his wife. The farmer left and was followed by Norik and Bastian. Merrick, the royal sorcerer, also felt something different about the farmer. Merrick seemed to know something about who the farmer was. After a little preparation, that day they immediately caught up with the Krug army, but they had to overcome various obstacles, ranging from crossing the ravine with a rope, dealing with creatures like forest fairies who guard the forest, until at night they arrived at the Krug army camp. After beating up a few Krug, they went straight to where the hostages were being held by disguising themselves in Krug helmets. However, having just found Solana, the farmer and the others were immediately captured by Krug's troops. Meanwhile at the castle, it turns out that Duke Fallow has teamed up with Galleon to finish off the current king of EHB, and they secretly use the basement to meet. The Duke has ambitions to quickly become king, so he can share his power with Gallian. On the other hand, in Mariella's room, Gallian had stopped by there after meeting with the Duke. Gallian entered the room with his magic. Of course Gallian could easily come and go at will to make love to Mariella. But at that time Mariella began to feel guilty about what she was doing. Mariella felt that she was betraying her own kingdom. Moreover, Mariella felt that she was only a whore for Gallian, who came when she wanted to. Hearing this, Gallian was furious and immediately left there. When the king was eating, he was approached by the Duke, who as usual with his words always curried favor with the king. The Duke asked the king for forgiveness for his childish behavior, and promised to improve it so that he would be worthy of being the king's successor. Shortly after that, when the king wanted to meet with Mariella, but suddenly the king began to get dizzy and collapsed to the floor. Apparently, the king was poisoned by Gallian silently. Meanwhile, in the basement, the Duke who ate the same dish as the king also experienced symptoms of poisoning, but the Duke was saved by Gallian, who had the antidote, while saying that Gallian was now in power. Elsewhere, the royal witch who sensed her king was in danger immediately went home to save him. Arriving there, fortunately Merrick was not too late, and finally managed to neutralize the poison in the king's body. However, they received bad news, that the Duke had just brought 2 battalions of troops heading north to ally with the Krug army. They finally knew the Duke's foul intentions, and after the king realized, the king immediately ordered the commander to prepare troops to attack. While in the Krug camp, Norik and Bastian are now prisoners in a cell with Solana, while the farmer will be hanged by Gallian, who feels threatened by his existence. On the other hand, Merrick felt that the farmer was in danger, so Merrick asked permission to get out of line. When Gallian was about to finish off the farmer quickly fought back, then defeated the Krug executioner controlled by Gallian, and the farmer was saved. Soon after came the royal troops who treated him, then took him away to the king. After arriving at the camp of the royal troops, finally revealed the secret that had been kept by Merrick. Merrick revealed that this farmer was actually the king's son, who had been considered dead long ago during the war. It turned out that Merrick had kept his existence a secret all this time. The farmer, who felt that since childhood he had only lived as a Kara, clearly rejected this statement. Even in front of the king's face, the farmer said that all this time he had never had a father. Then he left there. On the other hand, 2 battalions of Ebb's royal troops met Krug's troops in the forest, and the 2 battalions clearly did not know that they were brought to rebel, so when they saw the king still healthy on his horse, they immediately turned to support the king and left the Duke and his Krug troops, and the farmer also joined the EHB troops. Meanwhile, in the royal castle, Mariella began to regret her actions, which even loved the enemy. But finally Mariella decided to make amends for her mistakes, then put on her combat suit, and decided to go down to the battlefield against the Gallian kingdom. In the forest, the battle between the EHB kingdom and the Krug army was quite fierce. The peasant was nimbly able to eliminate the Krug leaders controlled by Gallian from a distance, but the Duke escaped surveillance, so the Duke freely shot the king of EHB from a distance, which directly hit his chest. Although the battle was finally won by the troops of the kingdom of EHB, it was still a big loss for the kingdom, especially since the king was now injured. Meanwhile, Duke Fallow fled into the forest, and accidentally Duke met Mariella, who was on her way to the EHB army camp. When Duke was about to persecute her, suddenly came the rangers or forest fairies, who immediately saved Mariella and tied the Duke. Meanwhile, in the castle, the prisoners began to be brought in there. Norik, whose courage was still high, made a mess in there. Norik was assisted by Bastian to make a gap so that Solana could escape, but Norik had to be killed while doing so. Bastian and Solana did not manage to escape from the castle. Moreover, Solana was brought before Gallian, and Gallian, who felt the farmer's presence in Solana's body, was clearly very interested in her. It turned out that at that time Solana was pregnant with the farmer's child. The scene moved back to the camp of the EHB army, precisely in the tent of the dying king. The farmer finally admitted that the king was his father, because of a sentence that the farmer always remembered from childhood, and the king said that the sentence was always given by him every night, when going to sleep his son. The king was happy, because the one who would become his successor was a wise and brave man. After that the king finally died peacefully. While in the forest, Mariella came to bring the Duke. Mariella gave him to Sam, the royal war commander, and with great annoyance, the war commander invited him to a sword duel to the death. But when Sam almost finished off the Duke, suddenly the news of the king's death was heard from one of the troops. The Duke, who felt that he was the only heir, immediately appointed himself king of EHB, which of course could not be killed by his troops. But from behind the crowd came the farmer and the royal magician, who revealed everything, that the farmer was the rightful heir and now the farmer was officially the king of EHB. From the beginning of the movie, this is the first time Petanu is called by his real name, Camden Conread. This obviously makes the Duke immediately eliminated. The farmer immediately instructed to prepare to attack with the existing troops to the Galuan kingdom, while he, the sorcerer, Mariella, and assisted by the leader of the Rangers, will immediately infiltrate the castle to finish Gallian and save Solana. With his magical vision, Galuan knows the plan, so Gallian immediately sends a rainstorm and his Krug army to the border, to hold the royal troops there. The day that was sunny immediately turned into a dark night. On the other side of the mountain, the farmer and his friends were sneaking through a small cave at the top of the cliff. Then the sorcerer would try to distract Gallian by entering there, while trying to make him realize, because it turned out that Gallian and the sorcerer were of the same race, and they were the last people of their race. With a rope brought by the ranger, the farmer finally managed to jump over the cliff and into the cave. While in the castle, Gallian was fighting with Merrick the royal sorcerer. However, in the end Merrick lost after his chest was pierced by Gallian's magic sword. Merrick, who was dying, called his daughter, Mariella. Suddenly, Mariella was able to do what her father did. Her body turned into particles and flew to the place where her father was. There the sorcerer transferred his last magic power into Mariella's body. Then Merrick died peacefully. In another room, the farmer who had managed to enter immediately fought against Gallian. There the farmer also finally met his wife Solana. But of course this battle was not balanced, because Gallian fraudulently used magic power to defeat the farmer. When the farmer was almost killed, Mariella came to save him. Solana also helped by stabbing Gallian from behind, and quickly the farmer who had escaped Gallian's magic trap immediately slashed Gallian's neck, which made him die instantly. The movie ended happily, because the farmer was reunited with the wife he loved. So, what do you think about this movie? Maybe you can write it in the comments column, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.